We are live. Okay, thank you everyone for joining in. You all know me, Joseph, and across me, or next to me in this case, is Felipe. Felipe, if you will introduce yourself a little bit, a little introduction about yourself, where you come from. We know you, or at least I know you personally. We've met on a car show, and I discovered your channel, Instagram channel, that is. That's very informative. It has a lot of data on car sales and in general car industry.
Well, yes, you're right, Joseph. Good to see you again. We met last year in Paris Motor Show. I'm happy to be here talking to you. Yes, as you said, I'm Felipe Munoz. I am originally from Colombia. I'm based in Italy, and a big passionate of the car industry. That's why I moved to Italy, because I wanted to pursue a career in the motor industry. So I worked some years in Fiat Chrysler, and then I moved to JATO, where I am right now as an analyst and media relations. So basically, yes, I'm following the industry trends. Uh, for work and for pleasure, because my personal profiles, my personal channels, are not related to my job, but at the end is the same industry, because it's my passion. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Great. Let me just turn on my laptop for a moment because I've made some pointers so we don't get lost and don't go too broad into our topics. Then, if these topics will be interesting, we'll maybe do a live on Instagram on your channel and maybe get deeper into some of the topics we wanted to cover today.
Yeah.
Our
Let's see
goal
how
is
let's see the
around an
feedback.
hour.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just open that for a moment. I'm just gonna put my phone like this. Okay. Now, well, car sales, and I saw a lot of your data, and I see your data is very up to date because you get faster data than local media picked up or released for Croatian markets. Um, now, let's talk about effects of inflation. I'm not a what's the word, economy person, economist, but you are in a way. You deal with the data. You always crunch the numbers, go through the numbers. So, what can you tell us from your experience looking at uh, car market, car prices? Let's say in last 5 years, what would you say what's happening in the market? If you want to go a little bit backwards, maybe to 2018, before we started feeling the inflation, and just before that COVID, let's call it crisis. That's what everyone called it. How do you think what's developing the market? How is it affecting the car industry and the customers in the end? Because we know um, there's always higher paying customers and those who are on a budget. But how is that affecting all of us in a way?
Well, yes, there has been an inflation phenomenon over the last 5 years, I would say, that was more or less boosted by the pandemic. Right after the pandemic, the governments around the world started to spend a lot of money to reactivate the economy. But this had a negative impact on inflation. And of course, the car industry is part of the economy, and they were not exempt from this rise in prices. So what we've seen is a big increase on the prices of cars over the last 5 years, especially between 2022 and 2023, all over, everywhere. In Europe, I'm talking out of Europe and the US mainly, but there were some increases in other regions, emerging markets, and so on. So at the end of the day, yes, cars are quite expensive nowadays. We've seen this increase on the average of the price of cars in many markets. Just to tell you, just one number: in 2018, the average price of a car was 74,000. I mean, the average price of all the models available. This is not volume weighted, but anyway, it was something around 74,000 euros for all the cars available. And but it was also the case in the United Kingdom. We were talking of 68,000, in USA 77,000, and we've seen an increase over the years, even though in 2024 there has been a decrease, because inflation is not, let's say, it's not a problem anymore. So the price increases are moderating, and but still we're talking of expensive cars. I mean, if you want to buy a city car today in Europe, you need to spend at least 15,000 euros
Steve,
before
I
the
would say if you're on a really small budget and you're buying like a 65 horsepower, 75 horsepower petrol engine,
Mm,
which is for city commuting, let's say enough if you're going to work. But if you want to have a car that's at least for occasional road trips, if you have a family or car, you at least want to have a minimum 100 horsepower. But yes, so I would
yeah.
say like you need to start at least with 20. That's minimum 25. Even we're looking at some budget brands like Dacia.
Yeah. So, and that's not affordable. I mean, before the pandemic, we used to have to see prices even below 10,000. I am in Italy, and I remember the Fiat Panda for a long time and around with 8,000, 9,000 euros. Today, you cannot buy a brand new car with that money. So yes, this is becoming. It's becoming a big problem right now, because as you, I don't know if you saw the results for Europe last year, but the market barely grew. It's the European car market doesn't grow anymore,
Yeah.
and partly because the cars are very expensive, and a lot of people cannot afford them.
Yeah, we're seeing a decline in sales, but I'm going to touch the topic of Germany. They are having inflation. Croatia is having a probably the highest inflation at the moment in the eurozone, um, because people got raises because everything started going. Talking generally, prices, food prices, and service prices went up. So people started raising. I mean, the government started raising taxes. Excuse me, not taxes, salaries. And the people started spending more money because they had extra money, and they weren't like, "I'm gonna save some money on the side." They were just like, "I have more money. I'm gonna buy more stuff," and that just started spiraling. And the governments are, we know, always slow in reaction to the uh, uh, situation that's currently developing. Now, um, my point is more spending, and people were buying new cars in Croatia. The car sales are now uh, good as they were before the last crisis, when they were in their peak, and there's double the amount of new cars on the roads. But this is usually driven by companies. You might have noticed this in the Balkan area, that the hello to our first commenter, that the excuse me, Serbia, for example, Croatia, they're driven by sales by lease companies, by private companies who are driven the sales, and personal sales are very low. Even if we talk electric vehicles, I wanted to point that to the German situation. We saw like the Tesla was number one selling car. Uh, of course, their models are now a little bit outdated, especially the new Model Y came out. So,
Yeah,
so they're naturally dropping. But we saw that the Germans are starting to save money, and they're not reluctant to spend more money on a new model and get a new lease deal. They're just maybe extending lease, or they're just reconsidering. A lot of people are reconsidering: is it the right moment to buy a new car? Um, I wanted to also discuss a little bit about budget brands, because Across your analysis, I saw a lot of Dacias. Okay, we know Skoda is a very popular brand, but it's has a strong background because of the Volkswagen Group. But maybe some people who are not out of industry, they do not know that Dacia is actually underneath a French car. But very reliable engines. The Duster is a very popular model, and personally, uh, back in the day, like word of mouth, I was always like, that's a cheap car. But when I actually talked to some customers who were early customers, when I really thought that's not something that's reliable, they were like really happy, good feedback with the car. When I finally put my prejudices on the side and tested the Duster, not the latest one, but the one before, it's a pretty solid car. Yes,
It
and
is.
the prices
Yeah.
were pretty solid as well when we're looking before 2022. And in
Yeah,
Croatia, they've sold all the diesel cars
I
because
know.
they don't have anymore the diesel. But what can you tell us about the
Yeah.
car markets now? What are the popular brands, and what are the most sold brands in Europe?
Well, look,
So,
Dacia, as you say, is very popular. I don't know. Actually, I don't know what would be the situation of Renault Group without Dacia, because Dacia is the cash cow of the group. They are doing a very good job. They keep growing every year because their products are very competitive. Their products are not that expensive. They are good. They're improving every generation. The latest Duster, for example, is a great product in terms of quality, in terms of specs, and in terms of look. Actually, is a good looking car, such
yeah,
as the new Bigster, for example. So Dacia is making a lot of progress, not only in Eastern Europe, because yes, you're right. In Eastern Europe, what you see the most is, I mean, at least in the top 10 for new cars, is Dacia and Skoda. You're right. Octavia is very popular in Eastern Europe and the Balkans. But you see a lot of Dacias also in Western Europe. Actually, the Sandero was the top selling car in Spain. It was among the top five in France. I think it outsold the Citroën C3 in France. So it's a big thing, even in the UK. So these
sorry for
cars are
interrupting, but do you remember the Switzerland? I was really surprised.
Switzerland, right? Yeah,
We're talking about the most expensive country in Europe, but
yeah,
this are just direct metrics telling what people are buying, what people think it's good, what's
yeah.
reliable in the long term, and where's the value for money in the end. Um,
Yes. They are what I call honest cars. What you pay is what you get, but you know that you're gonna get. You know what you're gonna get. So you don't need to just a lot of features and a lot of screens. These cars are just for the people who wants to move from point A to point B in a nice car, good looking car, and that's it. But you don't need to worry about anything else. That's why I think Dacia is a good example from you. Is one of the very few examples we can take from the European car market, and I don't understand yet why other car makers in Europe have not been able to replicate the Dacia success. There is no direct drive on to Dacia right now. Nothing.
that is true. See, when we're talking about, I'm going to switch a little bit to the electric cars, to the battery electric cars. Um, what I've noticed, like the little Twingo or the Volkswagen Up, there was a lot of iterations in the Volkswagen group of the Volkswagen Up, but that was the affordable EV they made, besides the Golf. And okay, those were like the early EVs. Maybe they didn't have the best range, but for a city commute, they were perfect. And I can also tell you, like from battery perspective, like from the engineering part, they are reliable. There is a person here fixing electric vehicles outside warranty, and he says at least the Volkswagen Group is very good. There were a little bit battery design wise issues, let's say, with some French design of the batteries because they have this pouch cells instead of the cylinder cells. So when one swells in the pouch, it just damages the one that's next to it, because you're just like put like this in a row. But they're really reliable EVs, because we know all Tesla is the most proven one. But and then to get back to the point, they started with affordable cars, and then they went after the COVID crisis. Make the most expensive model, put it on the market to get the return as fast as possible, which wasn't
Yeah.
really going as they planned. And we can see now they're announcing we're going to make cheaper brands, like new Polo size, maybe EV, that's going to be around 25, 30, 35. So yeah, a lot has changed.
Yeah.
So Twingo Electric is also the car that was for the market. And then I hope Renault Group is going to make a new generation, but I've seen they are investing a lot into the small cars back. But when it comes to the petrol versions, they're completely removing them out of the out of the market. And for
Right.
example, I get a lot of comments. For example, for Focus, which is going to be discontinued soon, people are leaving comments. Why are they removing it? It was such a good car, even for in the States where it wasn't that much popular. But I guess you know the numbers. They're just not selling anymore. SUVs are, I guess,
Yeah.
more popular.
Yes, hatchbacks and sedans are suffering the consequences of the SUV boom, but it's been for years now, and yeah, we are seeing less of those cars, especially if when you look at the D segment. You remember the Ford Mondeo, the Nissan Primera, the Citroën C5, and all of those cars that used to be, I mean, were part of the roads everywhere. Opel Insignia, that segment is almost disappearing today. If you want a mainstream the sedan or the wagon, you have the Skoda Superb, Volkswagen Passat, and that's it pretty much, because the French are, I mean, Renault just discontinued the Talisman, and I think Peugeot won't work on a replacement for the 508, and that's it. Citroën just introduced the C5X, but that's a different car, and that's it. You don't find many options anymore in that segment because of the SUVs, and that's happening also with the hatchbacks, C hatchbacks, and many others. Well, people want SUVs, so why don't you give them SUVs? And actually, it's even better for the car makers, because they charge you more for an SUV than a regular car, even though in most of the cases they are more or less the same car.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm a tall person. For me, it's more practical. Of course, it's easier to get in the car. But when you think about people who are buying cars, maybe the most people, I'm looking my metrics, the most audience, like year wise, and it's like people around 30, 40 years. And but I do have a lot of customers who are like 50 plus, maybe a little bit less, 60. But there are people who are looking for maybe their retirement car. And when you're older, it's just easier to set in a tall vehicle, because you don't have to, your back hurts, your knee hurts. So it's I guess natural.
It's
um
more, yeah, yeah.
to I'm watching the timer here, so we've said we're gonna keep it around an hour. Let's continue on. I've put in a question here. We lost the Geneva Auto Show. It was a very specific situation with something no one can predict, with the pandemic and the coronavirus. But what do you think? I was When I was a kid, I went to car shows here in Zagreb. We lost that for a specific reason. But I've really enjoyed watching the cars as a child. You told me you also finished a car design, and one of the things that attracted me to the cars was also the car design. And do you
Me too. Yeah.
the car makers, or excuse me, yeah, car makers are making a mistake for not showing up to car shows in general in the last few years after the pandemic has finished up.
Hello to Yuri, a friend from Central Asia who I met in Beijing Motor Show. Yes, I mean it's sad that we don't have these motor shows anymore. When I go to a motor show, I'm like a little kid in Disney World. I'm just so happy seeing all the car getting in and looking at the shapes and talking to people. But look, the Europe is not in its best shape right now. The industry is facing many challenges, and the last thing they want is to spend a lot of money on a motor show when they don't even know if they're gonna be able to survive in some years. So I think this period we won't see anything relevant. I mean, in Europe in terms of motor shows, because the attention is moving to China, and that's what I saw when I went to Beijing Motor Show in 2024, almost a year ago. It was totally different from the mood you saw in Europe. In China, there was enthusiasm, a lot of press, a lot of people, a lot of new cars, and that's not the case in Europe anymore. There is a crisis, but at the same time, I don't think we should say that the motor shows in the West are dead forever. No, this is just a period, a crisis period, and I think sooner or later, if the Europeans wake up and react, they will be able to come back, and motor shows will be always a good way to show their cars. You know?
Well, hopefully they'll continue on, because I think when you think about the ideas they're saying now, the cars will drive us in the future by themselves. So you won't own a car. I feel a little bit sad for the future generations. They won't have this passion about
Right.
cars, despite being just completely material objects.
Yeah.
To continue on this topic that you mentioned, there's a lot of.
Hey, sorry, Joseph. By the way, you should go to Shanghai Motor Show this year.
Excuse me, what? Which one?
You should go to Shanghai Motor Show. I'd love to go. Let's see if I can make it.
It was a
Actually, I'm
it was a
in Europe.
plan, but I'm gonna see it. It's a costly trip, so I'm not sure if it's. I'm trying
Yeah,
to
I know.
reduce my trips this year, because financially
I
it's
know, but
struggle.
uh, you can have a sponsorship or something from one of those Chinese car makers. Yeah.
I was thinking of that. I will
Mhm.
consider it. Um, Now, to come to Chinese brands, we saw a lot of disruption in the market, and a lot of new Chinese brands who are not completely new per se as a brands, but they're just new in Europe specifically. And I've tested, well, a few. I'm not gonna say a lot, but I've tested 14. I've tested Geely and MG as well, which some people don't perceive as Chinese brands, but they're
Yeah, they
making
are.
high quality car. When we're talking about these prices as well, they're very competitive in prices. They're competitive in what size of the vehicle you can get for the compared to European brands. And honestly, despite a lot of skepticism about reliability in the future, and then I'm going to pull here now a reference, because everyone's trying to push out new models faster now, and they're not bulletproofing their technology, and they're doing it on the go. They're fixing it, and this is a little bit affecting the customers' trust in European brands as well. But the Chinese cars, the most of the comments are, "I'm gonna wait for other people to buy it, and then I'm gonna buy it in next 2, 3, or 5 years when I see it's reliable." And when I test these cars, they're really good. Maybe they are not so efficient as some European cars in consumption, but again, it really depends on your driver. But maybe
Yeah.
that's the only con. But the cars are quality made, at least from my experience. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from European customers who are loyal to European brands. I'm not gonna now talk trash, but certain brands, they're getting some problems in the terms that the car needs to go to the dealership, stay there for a week on service in order to be fixed, and they're slightly disappointed. So, and there's also customers who bought Chinese cars, and they have the like small things like I don't know, condensation in my light. It happened in my Tesla as well. But some of the first feedbacks, there were not really some serious issues. There was a
Mm.
service visit in the dealer, but it's something that was fixed in the same day. It's not a serious issue.
Sure, yeah.
What
But
do you think about the whole picture here?
well, look, I agree with you. I mean, the quality is, at least the perceived quality, what you touch, what you see, is very good. I as I said, I in a motor show, I get in almost every car, and I just look and touch and everything, and I was really surprised by the good quality. I think they are the same level of the West in terms of quality. Reliability is a different issue, because reliability, we still need to know. These Most of these cars are coming from new brands that they don't have a history, so we should wait some years to see the reliability, how long these cars last. But I mean, the Chinese car makers have learned from the West over the last 30 years. That's what they've been doing, and that's why they learned so fast. And now they are, let's say, outperforming the West in many things, especially particularly with electric cars. So yeah, I'm from Colombia as well, and there you see also people trying these new brands, because, by the way, their prices are very competitive compared to the traditional car makers. So, as I always say, the real battle between China and the legacy car makers is not happening in Europe. It's not happening in the US. It's not happening in Japan or Korea. It's happening in the emerging markets. That's where you really see these Chinese makers, Great Wall, BYD, MG, GAC, and many others, gaining a lot of traction at the expense of lower market share for Toyota, Volkswagen, Hyundai, and the traditional ones. So yeah, it's interesting.
Did you get any chance to actually test drive one, or you went to China? I saw last year. You've driven some
Yeah.
cars. What's your feedback when it comes to driving those cars?
Look, I went twice last year. The last time was in December, because I went to a Neo event. So I had the opportunity to drive a Neo ET5 wagon, and the Onvo L60, which is their new brand. And I like the Neo. We all know how Neos are, but the Onvo was really a good surprise. This is very good car in terms of everything: design, quality, the specs, the infotainment, the software. It drives very good. It was a very pleasant driving, and I think it's a car with a lot of potential in outside China.
Okay. Well,
What about you? Tell me something, Joseph. You've been testing more and more Chinese cars, right? Because it's becoming like a new trend to try these cars and give feedback. But what's your public saying about these cars? Are they still, because at least my public has a very bad perception.
well, it's a little bit mixed opinions. Specifically, I'm gonna be specific because I didn't get a lot of them. They're not all available in Croatia, but Geely's cars. I've tested the Coolray and just recently the Starray.
Ah,
Um,
I saw it.
Coolray is around 25, 26,000 euros. Actually, it's like 24 and 26 is the top model, but it's competing with Dacia. And when you look at Dacia and Coolray, Coolray inside is like Mercedes-Benz. When it comes to posh interior and so on, it does lack some features. Like people were really surprised by this. There's no
Mhm.
RDS, so the station frequency FM doesn't show the radio station name, so it's a little bit confusing. But you have Apple CarPlay. Unfortunately, no Android Auto. Not sure why. Maybe they're gonna fix that in the future. But uh, a lot of people bought Coolray, and I've talked to the local dealer who is exclusive here, and they've sold them out. Uh,
Really?
Also, Starray is new now. I can't tell about it. There's one person who told me he bought the car. He had few smaller issues, but very happy because it's a very big SUV, very nice inside. Um, it is a little bit more thirstier. I'm usually very gentle in driving, anticipating when to brake and deaccelerate and so on. Not a classical driver who just floors it to the next traffic light. But um, with the new Lincoln Co. 01, which is an amazing car, if you're looking for a plug-in hybrid, um, you know that it was available in most of Western countries as a subscription car. And I've read a little bit on car forums. There was a lot of mixed experience, good and positive and bad, with that car. But here they started selling them in Balkan areas, so ex-Yugoslavia and Greece, and you can buy them for cash. They were advertising now, if I'm not mistaken, around 50,000 euros, which is, if you're looking, that's on built on Volvo platform. Uh, okay, but they just weren't selling. They're completely new. No one heard about them. They didn't start advertising immediately on the TV and billboards. But when they actually started advertising, uh, they just figured out they're not selling for the price they want to sell them. They started dropping prices. In the Black Friday action, they've sold them for around 35,000 euros,
Wow.
and they were completely sold out. And now it's interesting. It's You're in Greece. They were calling Greece other dealerships in other countries. They're not connected, but they were the same group, and they were pulling cars that were sitting on a lot for a year in Greece. Didn't sell. They sold it in Croatia because they're just giving them away under the price. I don't know where's the profit in that. Maybe they did include that big margin. Maybe they didn't, but they were sold out. It's a great car, and even for a used one, you can get one for, like, let's say 2 years old, 60, 80,000 kilometers for 25,000 euros used. It's a fairly new car. So we get
So,
we-
so, but so instead of 50,000, they were sold by 35,000. That's
yes,
a amount. Uh, but I think Lincoln Co is facing a repositioning right now with Picker, right?
yes, and also tested the 14. It was a great. It had the Mitsubishi engine inside, so but the car is amazing. It's just all
Which
around great value for money. It's 14 T5 Evo.
T5 Evo, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a new model now. I haven't seen it yet. Also,
and
14 just. I was invited next week's to. They're introducing some very affordable EV. I forgot the name of it. There was something. I don't know. I forgot. It was just a small
but
car.
14
Very easy to see.
as well. 14.
No, I can use my phone now because we're streaming, but it's a
But
small electric car, something like 40 kilowatt battery. But in terms of Twingo, 250 kilometers range tops and so on. But
okay.
for a city car, very affordable.
Okay.
Um,
You mean the
I
Nami
think
zero?
yes,
Yeah. But I think that the Geely Starray that you just tested, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, it looks, at least it looks very good.
it's an amazing car. To tell you honestly, if I wasn't um, into driving electric now, and I just like the feeling of driving. And that's the next topic I want to compare uh, and ask you. What do you prefer, and your experience after trying both the ICE engines and the battery electric drivetrains? Um, I would definitely, maybe, since I'm a taller person, my next car is definitely going to be an SUV. But I would consider one of those Chinese cars because you get a big SUV for a good budget. They're really nice inside. The performance of the engine and the automatic transmission is really good. I'm not so heavy foot on the gas, so maybe I wouldn't have too much fuel economy. But my mentality has changed. I want to drive electric, and it's not just because I'm necessarily saving money. Uh, I just enjoy the smooth acceleration, the lack of noise. It's not that it's super noisy. We got used to that. Since we were babies, we were driven in cars that are noisy.
Yeah.
But it's just a feeling, and it's less stressful for me. And I don't know how do you feel about that? Do you prefer like that or not? Or you're the classical petrol head that likes to hear something?
No, I'm not neither one nor the other one. I mean, I'm not. First of all, I'm not a car tester, so I'm not. I'm not. I don't have the details as you do and communicate them. I've been driving some cars that they sometimes they lend me to drive for some weeks, and yes, I drive and I can feel the differences. But I'm not a car tester. I cannot test. I cannot tell you big details about the engine
Or I'm
or
just
the.
asking, like, generally, do you like more the classical cars, or do you prefer maybe the electric? Because I saw you tested the Model X and some other EVs. So what's
Yeah.
generally like electric versus petrol? Not generally, not necessarily petrol or maybe diesel, but which one do you prefer more? How it feels when you drive it? Which one's more pleasant?
Look, it all depends. I've had very good experiences driving electrics. I think the driving is very nice. The acceleration is crazy. You can feel immediate the power with an electric car. I've driven the Model X. I think was the best one, 220,000 euros. That's the plate, right? I don't know.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Then the Model 3 plate as well. I had it for some days, and Polestar 2 as well. And all of them were very nice. The only problem is the charging thing. I had a road trip with the Polestar 2 in Italy, and I mean a trip that usually takes 3 hours. It took the double, 6 hours, because you need to stop, you need to look for it, and there is yes, it's not comfortable that part. But you can. The thing is that you cannot have everything, right? So,
yes.
but well, I wouldn't mind having an electric car. Why not? I mean, as long as the charging is not a pain. But if every day you need to drive a lot to find a charging point, no, that's not nice.
To be fair, from a Tesla standpoint, as a Tesla owner, I can tell you that, and as an EV reviewer, I know all the difficulties with legacy EVs. It's maybe less pronounced now when Tesla has opened its charging network, and Ionity has a really big network as well. But yes, if you're new, I'm more into tech, into up to date stuff, and a lot of people are just not, and it's something completely new. But yeah, if you have a reliable network, and which that's one of the key selling points, I think, still for Tesla, because when you open the navigation, and let's say now I'm in Zagreb, and I type in Athens, it's gonna give me exact time, including the charging time, exact stops, what what percentage I'm going to arrive at each stop, with how much I'm going to leave, and error is like 2 to 3% tops. And it's a very reliable system. And then I went from Zagreb to Barcelona when I bought the car.
Oh wow, with the Model 3.
Yes, I was driving for 12 hours, and then went to sleep in Italy, and then just continued on from Italy to Spain. It was crazy. I went to Barcelona car show. It was a lot, but it was time of COVID. I didn't want to deal with the passes, and I just said I'm not gonna buy a plane ticket because it's gonna cost me the same. And I had back then some free supercharger kilometers, and then I took my girlfriend as well, and then we both went on the trip, and they were in the Barcelona for a few days, and as tourists, and it was really nice. But yeah, I would say when you compare, if we talk about economy, economical perspective of driving electric vehicle, long travel. If someone is doing a lot of kilometers or miles for work, it doesn't really um, save a lot of money because charging prices are around the fast chargers between 40, excuse me, more like now 50 to 60 cents if you have, let's say, their plan. Tesla has a certain price for Tesla cars, and then for those who come with the uh, legacy EV, same for Ionity, like Volkswagen has the same price for Volkswagen, and then if Tesla or some other EV that's not part of the Ionity group will pay a little higher price. But when you look at the consumption, and Tesla maybe here is the best in power consumption, and one of the key reasons for that, I believe, from technical standpoint, is the heat pump is a very sophisticated, the most sophisticated heat pump in the world compared to ones that legacy car makers are making. Because I also did some tests. I had a belief that winter tires are spending more because of the rolling resistance. But then I've tested my car when temperature was ideal between 20 25
Mm.
Celsius degrees, and that's where the battery likes to be. And it doesn't matter what tires you have. If you're driving at the same speed, do the same test, the consumption's the same. So it's just in the winter, if you have a good heat pump and you preheat your car, there's no really significant drop in range and so on. Okay, not to go here. This could be a separate topic in my experience of driving EVs. I just wanted to hear your feedback. Uh,
But one question. I remember in Paris, we talked about many things, and I remember I asked you if you thought that the Teslas were the best electric cars. Are they still the best electric cars you can buy right now?
I would say I haven't tested. I'm not gonna include these more expensive brands that are some available or not available in Europe, but I would say if you're looking at Model 3 and Model Y in that price range, they are. And I would say still the value for money you get, they are. But there's still a lot of competition breeding behind her neck.
Mm.
Kia and Hyundai made a really great EVs. The Ionic is a great EV. I can see there in the States now driving the
Yeah,
sales.
they only five.
Yes, and they have. When I tested them, I've had them for a brief test because it's a small market here. They bring you up one for the press and then they sell it immediately. Um, but it had a good power consumption, a good the trim was good, the power was good because you have a lot of EVs who are like 130 horsepower. It doesn't really give you the big benefit of instant acceleration if you don't have a lot of power. And this is where Tesla does give you more value for money. For example, I've just published today ID3 GTX, and it's a little bit under 300 horsepower. Standard Tesla Model 3 has 300 horsepower. It has uh, okay, slightly smaller battery compared to the ID3, but the ID3 is more power thirsty, and it comes to roughly the same range you can pass through. But Tesla is more advanced when it comes to technology, and not
And
to go
so
into the fact that Volkswagen has now made a new infotainment. We're yet to see if there will be problems because they try to fix the previous one that they've launched. The ID3 was the first car, and the Golf 8 had this new infotainment MIB unit, and it was creating a lot of issues, freezing up. Not to go into details, but they just had a lot of issues. And from that standpoint, Tesla is a great value now. And I've personally spent on service 50 euros just to replace the two air filters for the cabin.
that's it.
That's it. No maintenance is required. And if you do it yourself, you're not canceling your warranty. Uh, Brake fluid is after 4 years. recommended, so it's not obligated. You have no obligation to service even the car in Tesla. But when you uh, ask them for an offer of service, it's really not that expensive. Even the hours are not expensive, and the parts. And the great thing is, I don't know if you were following this. A few years back, most car manufacturers didn't publicly leave service manuals online for the public. Uh, you couldn't see the price of the parts either. Tesla has well, there's a certain group in the states in America who uh, who pushed this idea, and they've passed a law. It's called the right to repair, and it's not just regarding cars. It's regarding everything. And now Tesla publicly shows you the price. You can go right now online, go to Tesla parts, and you can see every single part how much it costs you, and they're much cheaper compared to most of legacy. When you're talking about OEM parts, not third party part. So yeah, let me see here my points. Looking at the time here. Um, okay, this might be a spicy topic at the moment. Um, What do you think about Elon Musk? I don't want to go too much into politics. It's a very sensitive topic, but people are saying now, we know he is a part of the Trump administration for finance, but and made some suggest articulations that people, everyone's putting their own eyes where they want to see. I'm not going to comment that, but do you think are Elon's ideas or public speeches and all the things he's doing affecting Tesla and Tesla sales, or are this just the fact that it's outdated models getting refreshed, and is the demand really slowing down because of the competition? Or I wouldn't say no, but maybe I wanted to hear a different opinion.
Well, look, yesterday actually I was talking to a journalist from Wall Street Journal about it because they all want to know what's really happening with Tesla. Yes, that's true. In January in Europe, its sales fell around 47%. So that's a massive drop compared to January 2024. And but there is a bit of everything actually. It's not all one reason. It's not everything happening because of one reason. Part of the problem for sure is his involvement on politics, on the European politics, but I wouldn't say that's the main reason. I mean, the Model Y is under a model changeover, so all of these things are happening at the same time. The Model Y was the world's top selling car in 2023. We still don't know if it was in 2024. I'm still looking for the latest data because the race is quite tight between the Model Y and the RAV4. So I'm working on it. But anyway, it's a very popular car, and it got old last year. Last year it turned 5 years old because the Model Y it was presented in 2019, I think. So or 18, I don't know, I don't remember.
I think it was 19 the first, but it was like 2020 started.
But it was presented in 2019, but still, so it's according to the industry standards, 5 years or 6 years in the market is a lot for a car because by then you should be just introducing a new generation. But it's not the case. Tesla is not doing this. Tesla is working a different way. The Model 3 has been in the market since 2017. It had a big update 2 years ago, but it's still the same car. The same happens to Model S, Model X. Anyway, the Model Y is getting old. One, as the refresh version is coming. So usually when this happens, if you know it as a client, you just simply don't buy the previous one, or unless you have a very good deal. And then the company is also restricting production of the outgoing model. So while this happened, you don't have enough cars to sell because you are introducing the new one, and it takes usually 2 or 3 months. And at the same time, there is more competition. I mean, Tesla is not alone anymore. It was the case some years ago, but now there is competition everywhere, and the price cuts that Tesla implemented in 2023. You remember that they started cutting the prices every month, more or less.
Yes.
Uh, it worked very well in 2023. It worked somehow in 2024, but it's not the case anymore because, as I said, there is more competition, and the prices are not decreasing as much as they used to do some months ago. So all of these things combined, and with his involvement in politics, active involvement, is making this the perfect storm for Tesla. But I think that the updated Model Y is gonna sell very well. We just need to wait 2 or 3 months, but
They just released prices in Europe for the Model Y, and I think the price is the same. I mean, when you speak that out loud, and when you look at legacy brand, new model prices always go up,
yeah.
and that was the case in the last few years, even with just a facelift. And I liked your it was last year, I think, the Golf, Volkswagen Golf. I think you compared from sixth to eighth generation. The price
Ah,
increased.
yeah.
Forgot from the top of my head now. It was like something around 6,000 euros or something more.
Yeah.
That was. I mean, we know there's a lot of now safety technology that's mandatory and it just raises the prices. And they've been changing the trims, trying to remove those very basic trims, but still, for the customers, it's a hard pill to swallow. um,
And another thing that I think is happening. You remember the Dieselgate from Volkswagen
yeah,
10 years? It was a big thing. It was in the news. Everyone was talking about it. Germans are cheating and all that. Yeah. And during the first 2 or 3 months after the scandal, yes, we saw some big drops from Volkswagen in Europe and in the US. But no less than 6 months later, Volkswagen was selling even more cars. And how come? Because look, if your car doesn't break and if your car is good enough and you don't have any issues with your car, you don't care what the top management is doing. I mean, who cares? And actually,
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the majority of people, I think.
Yeah. And just to comment on the Tesla, like from my experience with this car, the only things that I dislike about the car is it's a little bit stiff because it's a heavy car. It has a little less than 2 tons, and you really feel that. But they advertise it as a sports sedan. Um,
I'm sorry, which one?
the Model 3. So my car,
Ah,
it's very heavy, and some people like stiff cars. I mean, Golf 8 was a stiff car and still is for the most part. But with the new Model 3, what they did, they really focused on two key points. It was loud inside. When you're driving in a quiet car and on the highway, it's just very loud. Very stiff. The standard range model with a smaller battery and rear wheel drive was much more lighter. It's like half a ton lighter, and it just feels like I would say like a classical car. But on the one with the big battery that I have and the all-wheel drive, it's just a heavy car. And they've created this new suspension system, not springs, but uh, the gas spring in a way.
mhm.
Also has a spring inside, but it's like oil, and it just moves faster. It absorbs faster. The actually when it hits the bump, it just returns faster. So, but basically, what happens is it's called FSD. It's not full self driving FSD. If it's uh, frequency sound dampening technology. So it gets rid of the this certain hertz we're hearing as noise, and
Mhm.
the ride is more quieter, and the car feels more softer when it comes to road imperfections, speed bumps, manholes, potholes. And I've tested my own car. There's a owner who refitted suspension, and it's built by Coney. I don't know if you heard of them.
No.
Uh, they're American company, and they developed this suspension. And Tesla, I think, because they have a patent, ordered that suspension from them. They're not the first car maker to use that, but it's relatively new. And when you sit in the new Model Y now, I haven't tested one yet, but when you sit in the new Model 3, the first thing you notice how comfortable it is. And they've dampened the sound inside the car. They've used more acoustic materials,
Mhm.
especially in the A pillars, and they've changed that. That's what I've heard Tesla engineers in one of the videos that was recently published. They've changed the lock mechanism, so you don't have that crappy boom sound. It just has that nice thump sound, like a German car.
Okay.
And these are the key things the customers notice immediately. And then there's the rest of the stuff, the ambient lights, the new design. But basically, they just quickly fell in love with the car. And if they had a great experience with the old Model 3 or Model Y, this is a huge improvement for them.
So
Despite not being architecturally changed too much, it's maybe slightly stiffer, but for them, it's basically the same car. The range is slightly increased, but those feelings that they get when they sit in the car, drive it, that's like the key selling point, and it just sells like that.
so you personally see big progress between the pre-facelift and the facelifted version of the Model 3, for example.
Regarding comfort and driving, yes, even in range, the cars are more efficient. They've changed the design of the wheels. They've changed the design of the cars to reduce the drag. They said also they've changed the brake calipers to. They didn't went into detail explaining this, but reducing the, I guess, brake. Uh, what's the word? It's
Friction.
not reducing the friction, but it's they've said reducing the drag, whatever that means.
Okay.
I don't know how or what they've changed, but they said it's just adding to the, maybe they're referring to maybe air passing. I'm not sure. Um, but they made a lot of changes in with the standard range car. Again, smaller batteries and just a rear-wheel drive. The car is more efficient, same, and it can almost do the same kilometers as mine with a bigger battery and all-wheel drive, which is heavy car, spends more power.
Hmm.
But with the larger battery, it can pass the same distance as the new one. The previous model, the same one, could travel at least 100 kilometers less. So
And I
maybe 40, but 50, 60 depends on the driver. But owners are saying now I can come, like, I travel from Zagreb to Zadar. It's a little bit less than 300 kilometers, but there's a lot of part of where you just go from flat area to hills, and then you just come down with a, again, old generation, you needed a long range battery. With the new generation, you can do it with a standard range battery, and just a great deal when you look at the price.
and I guess with the Model Y, the new one, the updated one is even going further. I mean, in terms of
Yes.
improvement.
Yes, it should. We should see that soon in the first test, but that should be the case. Yes, and
That's good.
and
That's
let
good.
me tell you, I have a friend who bought the car, same car, just with the base model, and you would think like a rear-wheel drive is not really stable. First thing that comes to your mind is BMW, right? Rear-wheel drive when you drive a car that has a 300 horsepower or more, and he's a faster driver than me. He burns through his tires. My tires on an EV, not that bad. I threw the summer tires because from factory they had a wheel alignment was a little bit different, uh,
Yeah.
and that's the reason that the tires started unevenly wearing out. So I did a wheel alignment and I fitted new tires. They're now perfectly wearing out. But my winter tires are basically like new. But my friend, he can now. This is the last season. The tires are completely worn off. But he said, and I've driven his car. You never lose traction. You never slip. Maybe a little, but not something that you would completely lose control. So it's an amazing car. If you haven't tested it, it would be great if you could get an opportunity. Um, we're almost an hour before we finish. I wanted to talk just briefly about car culture. In Croatia, we've talked about. I told you that like German cars are the best cars. Volkswagen is the top selling car. Skoda is now becoming more like a family oriented car. Octavia, Kodiaq, and so on. But in your home country in Argentina, what is the
Colombia.
long?
Colombia.
Excuse me, Colombia. Apologies. I don't know why
We
I've
speak Spanish. We speak
yeah.
Spanish. The same.
Okay, in Colombia, what's the car culture? What's the best car? What's the opinion of the?
Well, look. It has been traditionally dominated by Chevrolet. Chevrolet was the leader for many years because they had an assembly plant in Bogota, capital city. Last year, they closed the factory and they moved the production to Mexico because it's usually, I mean, Toyota Colombia is not a big market. And Renault has been always very popular because they also have an assembly plant. They still have it. Actually, it's the only one remaining. And Renault, it's been popular for many years. Actually, the Renault 4, that has been just reinvented. It
Yeah,
used to be the most popular car in Colombia. It's like the Beetle for the Germans. The Renault 4 was the car for in Colombia, and Mazda has been also very popular. Unlikely because Mazda is more like a niche brand, but it is very still popular. And lately, the Koreans, of course, Hyundai and Kia and Toyota are very strong too. So it's a bit of everything. Colombia doesn't have a local industry. As I said, only Renault is the one assembling Dacias in Colombia. So when you don't have a local industry, you have a bit of everything, right? It's like going to Chile, it's like going to Peru, other countries in Latin America without a local industry, unlike Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, where their industry is quite big. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we still have a few viewers here, so if you all want to maybe leave a question for Felipe or me, uh, feel free to type them in. Um,
We
what do you?
should, Joseph, you should do again this thing in another day. I mean, another day of the week. So we test the audience because it's good the conversation. Actually, it was a conversation
Oh,
and to exchange opinions or views about anything relevant. Actually, we should. I mean, we didn't talk about all the things, Stellantis, for example, which is also a very controversial topic, and many other things. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of topics we can cover in a separate videos. Um, what do you think about Tesla? I've just randomly posted out on Instagram, but new factory in India. I think. Do you think it's time we're gonna see a new model from Tesla? But I'm thinking potentially like a CUV, like a smaller SUV, because there's some leaks, but I didn't bother to check those if there are
But
any.
is it really happening, or is just because I saw the meeting between Musk and what's his name, Modi, and the Prime Minister of India? But is it really? Did they announce a factory in India?
Nothing officially, but I think they might be because it was before, and then if he visited India, it's I don't think it's has to do with his U.S. administration part. So it's likely that he is
Yeah,
that it was just postponed because of the maybe factoring to Germany and Berlin and trying to push that out. There was another thing that came to my mind I wanted to ask you, but now
but
it's slipped my
but, but,
mind.
but regarding this, I think that's exactly what Tesla needs to do. I mean, Tesla cannot continue relying on China, US, and Europe because those markets are not growing anymore, especially Europe.
Yeah.
So if Tesla wants more sources of growth, it needs to go to India, it needs to go to Southeast Asia, it needs to go to Latin America, because that's where growth is happening. That's where the population is finally starting to buy cars. So the other question is, the current lineup of Tesla is competitive enough in those markets? I'm afraid not, because those markets usually buy small cars. The smallest Tesla is the Model 3, which is a sedan of almost 4.7 meters. That's not what Indians buy. That's not what Latin Americans buy, or Southeast Asians. So a move like this of opening a factory in India, let's say, would require Tesla to come up with other models, smaller ones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know, like in Mexico, they sell a base Model 3 with textile seats, no screen in the back, and the new Highland, and it's something else. No heated seats, no, excuse me, no ventilated seats and stuff like that. But it's specific just for Mexico, and they never did that. And there's another country I forgot from top of my head now. It might be something like hmm, it's above Middle East country, like I don't know if it's Azerbaijan or some other country, but basically, or some maybe Asian country, but one of the smaller ones. Are selling a Model 3 with reduced power because there's a law, a local law, that if you have a higher power, you have to pay more
Mm.
tax, and then the car is crazy expensive. So they're selling basically a car that's software limiting the power, and that was their way to get into the market and make it affordable and competitive.
Well,
Which
yeah,
they never do. It's just for that specific market.
but still, we're talking of a big car,
Yeah, it's I
and
think my
Indians.
opinion is that they're gonna make a new model, and it's the right time right now. The Roadster is gonna be on ice for a
Yeah.
certain time.
So, but the thing is that they need to move fast, because these markets are being taken by Chinese right now. Thailand, for example, and Brazil are buying a lot of. I mean, the electric vehicle sales are growing very fast, but thanks to the Chinese car makers, not to
You
Tesla, not to the Europeans or Americans.
it's funny you mentioned Thailand. I went to Thailand, like personally, as a vacation last year, and I was surprised at the amount of MG
Hmm.
uh, electric cars on the road, and the variety of Chinese cars who were relatively new. I got some feedback from because I have an international channel, and there's always some comments from people across the globe, and from Philippines. They were saying about Star Ray, like it's a good car, it's reliable. We have it for a few years in our country, and that was a good feedback to me and to my European my customers, my audience, that um, who are skeptic about buying a Chinese car because you already have someone who's driving the car maybe for three, maybe I don't know if it's 5 years, but maybe for 3 years. And for me, that's a good feedback because I'm driving my car now for a little bit less than 4 years, and I can give a good feedback about that car. So even getting a feedback from a different country for the same model that's completely new here is a good feedback.
Yeah, and they are getting locally built Chinese cars. It's not even imported from China. BYD is making cars in Thailand. I think GAC as well. So yeah, MG. So it's happening. It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna try not to spend more of your time and try to wrap the video here and then. But what do you think? Like that's probably the key question everyone's maybe now asking, even the car manufacturers. What's the future for European car markets? Um,
Car
what's-
makers.
car makers. What's the solution in order to survive? I mean, generally, from my personal perspective, European leadership is lost in a way. I would say, I don't want to go into too much into politics, but the some of the Europeans' foundations are just being
No,
ignored and being changed, and I feel like we've lost the common sense generally, and the voters are maybe voting and showing their vote, and we can see in across the globe everything is changing. Hopefully these conflicts will end, but living in these difficult times we never imagined that we would go through when we're looking back at our history in Europe here and the World War II, because that's when the economy starting growing again back, and the car industry started developing fast after the World War. We know a lot of military industry was just transferred into uh, civilian industry, and the cars started developing, and Volkswagen started growing, making mass car markets. Ford started making also more modern cars, not referring to the first Ford, of course. But what do you think is the future? What's the solution? Do you have any idea, or it's just
well, look, I think we will see more consolidation. You just saw Honda and Nissan, even if they're not at the end, it's not gonna work. They're not merging, but at least they consider to merge in December. That was unthinkable some years ago, because we're talking of two rivals for decades that were considering to merge because of the Chinese competition. So I think we will see more consolidation. We will see companies increasing collaboration with other companies. We will see struggling car brands being bought by Chinese. There are many Western car brands which are struggling. I think the Chinese wouldn't mind buying them, and we will see, yeah, less groups, more mergers, more collaboration. And I think the way out of this is by increasing the cooperation and collaboration with China. I mean, if the world is moving towards electrics, and the ones who know how to make competitive electric cars are Chinese or Tesla, well, you go and work with them. You need to work with them, otherwise you're gonna be stay always behind. Chinese have the know-how, Chinese have the resources, and Chinese have the batteries, the supply chain, and that's something that the West doesn't have. So if you want to survive, you need to go and work with these guys and learn from them. Yeah.
yeah, and here's the maybe like a last question or a last idea before we end the video. Um, uh, I'm gonna talk a little bit here about Zagreb. Zagreb has an issue with air quality, and it's not specifically
Sorry,
according.
just for the context, Zagreb is the capital of Croatia.
Yes, Zagreb is capital of Croatia. It's inland, so we have a coast, but on the coast there's specific mountain chain that's dividing the coast from the mainland, and there's a lot of wind always. So the wind clears the air. It's a lot healthier regarding air quality to live in the coast, in the Mediterranean area. But inland, we don't have too much industry as we did in former country when we were part of Yugoslavia. But there are certain factories left in Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they're not part of the EU. They're not. They have less standards, to put it
Quality.
short, for ecological standards. And the wind is just bringing a lot of I guess soak and smog. But cars are increasing on the roads. It's becoming maybe not a huge problem. We're not that big population yet. But when we I want to put this into perspective. When we look at China, why are they switching to electric cars? They were making petrol cars and diesel cars. They have huge populations. I mean, you went to China and you saw the amount. I've only been to United States and I can in New York City, and when I saw the rush hour, how many amount of people are on one half island, it's mind blowing. And then when you think about all the cars that are just driving on the road, and we don't see it necessarily always as a black smoke, but there's just small particles that are bad for our health. And this is the reason why I'm happier to drive electric. I mean, it's just maybe a small portion, but that's the key reason why China is, despite having a lot of coal, and they have also battery materials, they're just looking into making in EVs. And there's a lot of houses here in Zagreb who are not connected to the gas system or heating system. We have this, not sure what's the translation for this, but we have like a plant that's heating the water and so on. But they're just using your typical wood for fire. And when they're burning that, we know the story. So in Dalmatia, I mean, in Croatia, even in Zagreb, we have a lot of sunny days. You live in Italy now. I see a lot of people putting solar roofs. And when you combine that with the electric car, if you have a house or an apartment, you drive free, and people are just, and I believe in China as well, despite they don't feel the inflation as much, but they are economically putting a picture with the driving cheap in a way, and if you save money on maintenance of the car, it's more financially viable for you, or more.
Yeah.
So, do you see that change in Italy, or the markets you went for? How is it in China? Did they talk about anything about that? Or
Well, look, I mean, in general, Europe is not fully independent in terms of energy, partly because of a policy of dismantling nuclear power, and partly because Europe was importing or bringing all the gas from Russia. Now it's a problem. And so these are new solutions, as you just said, the solar panels and electric cars. But I think it's not enough. I think Europe needs more independence. It needs to improve energy power, and these solar panels are welcome. Every solution is welcome, but it's not enough. And that's why, for example, there are countries in Europe that are now rethinking of going back to nuclear power, because that's, I mean, it's, yeah, I know it's dangerous, and I'm not an expert on energy, but it's easier in many ways. So let's see how it goes. But Europe, as it is not independent in terms of energy, it's going to be difficult.
yeah. Well, just for an end, I'm not sure if you heard in Spain, Croatia is part of this group that's investing in that. They're working on a basically like a fusion reactor, and
Mm.
they're making a lot of progress. What I heard, I didn't went into details. One of our scientists was mentioning that's working on the project that in 2030, 35, we might get it started working. And
That's good.
just recently, I think today that popped up on my social feed. I'm not sure if this is uh, actual information, but China is allegedly building a new large fusion factory. So,
Well,
talking about, let's say this is just hypothetical still, but the scientists are putting a lot of belief that this might become something that's uh, possible in near future. And same as this, Elon made rockets come down back without exploding. Um, but uh, it makes sense transferring to battery electric vehicles because of at one point we can't just cut forests and use all the fossil fuels. But
yeah, yeah.
I'm happy for that future. If we reach that a point where we won't have to pay too much for electricity and we have enough resources, maybe in the end, politics always fights for resources. Maybe we'll have a better future.
We'll see. See. I think, I believe that we should welcome any solution, not only electrics. I think
Of course,
as long as they are good and sales, how do you say, sustainable,
yeah.
they should be all welcome. But the problem right now is that they are only focusing. I mean, the EU is only focusing on one solution, and that's risky because first of all, Europe doesn't have for only electric cars. Europe is not independent in terms of energy, so it's very risky. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, we have a saying: "Keep your eggs in more baskets." It's safe. Okay, Felipe. That's it. We're gonna end the video here. Hopefully, maybe we can join next time on Instagram. You can start the live.
Good.
We'll see it maybe during the week. And maybe people are just resting today and want to watch movies. But it's interesting. A lot of topics that we covered are popular. We can always go into depth, but maybe uh, push an idea towards me, and we'll see. We can
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, and we can actually, Joseph, we can, each of us, we can ask our audience in advance what would they like us to talk about, and yeah, why not?
We can even suggest maybe let them suggest what time and day fits them the most because I had a little bit of work with that's why I choose the weekend. It's easier for me, but
Right.
I assume same for you.
Yeah.
Okay, Felipe, thanks for tuning in on my
Good.
channel.
Thank
Helping me, this video will be stay here. So if you have any comments, you can leave them here. I've left the link to Felipe's Instagram channel, so you can follow him if you already haven't discovered him. Also, thanks Felipe for joining in, and hopefully
you.
his audience, if they're looking for car reviews, I'm trying to be very detailed in my car reviews, unlike standard journalists. So feel free to watch the channel. I didn't cover all the brands yet, but there's a lot of detailed
No,
reviews.
you're doing a very good job, Joseph. Very good.
Thank
Bravo.
you. Well,
Okay. Bye bye. Have a
okay.
good weekend. Bye bye.
Bye.